Rome doesn't back down. That's the story they told us. The eternal empire, the unstoppable war machine, the civilization that swallowed everything it touched. But there is a moment, documented in Roman records, where Augustus Caesar, the most powerful man alive, sat across from emissaries of an African queen and gave her almost everything she asked for. No tribute, no Roman garrison on her land, her people freed, her terms. Not because he was feeling generous, because she had already beaten him twice, taken his soldiers captive, torn the head off a bronze statue of Augustus himself, and buried it beneath the steps of her temple so her people could walk over his face every single day. Her name was Amanirenas. She ruled the kingdom of Kush. She had one eye, and Rome never really talked about her again after that. Let me take you back to where this starts, because Kush is not a footnote. Kush is not Egypt's little brother. The Kushite kings had actually conquered Egypt centuries before Rome was even a city. They ruled as pharaohs, they built more pyramids than Egypt ever did, and by the time Rome was expanding south from its new province in Egypt, Kush had been a sophisticated iron-producing empire for hundreds of years. That matters more than it sounds. Iron weapons, iron tools, iron-tipped arrows fired from composite bows by archers who trained from childhood. The Kushite military wasn't a militia. It was a professional force with centuries of institutional knowledge. And it was commanded at this particular moment in history by a Kandake. That's the Meroitic title for queen. Not queen consort, not regent, queen, warrior, commander in the field. Amanirenas was described by the Greek geographer Strabo, a Roman source, as masculine and blind in one eye. He meant that as a put-down, he was recording her greatness without realizing it. Because she led her armies in person, into the field, with one eye, against the most disciplined infantry force the ancient world had ever produced. Here's where it gets specific. Rome's governor of Egypt, a man named Petronius, had pulled a significant portion of his legions south to deal with a military campaign elsewhere. The border garrison at Syene, modern-day Aswan, was thinner than usual. Amanirenas saw the gap, and she moved. 10,000 soldiers with war elephants crossed north into Roman-held territory. They sacked 3 Roman border cities. They took thousands of Roman soldiers prisoner, and they tore down the bronze statues of Augustus that Rome had installed as propaganda across the region. One of those heads, the famous Meroe head, was brought back to the Kushite capital and buried beneath the entrance to a victory temple. Archaeologists found it in 1910. It still had the inlaid glass eyes intact. That is not a raid. That is a message. Petronius came back with his full force, and he wasn't casual about it. He pushed deep into Kushite territory, took the city of Napata, and inflicted serious losses. On paper, Rome had responded and reasserted itself. But here's what the Roman records are careful not to dwell on. Amanirenas didn't stop. She kept fighting. She harassed the Roman supply lines. She attacked the garrison Petronius left behind at Casa Ibrim. She kept the pressure relentless across multiple seasons of conflict. Rome was holding a piece of Kush, but it was costing them. Maintaining a distant garrison in desert terrain against an enemy who knew that terrain better than anyone, who had local support, who had the will to keep going. That's a war of attrition Rome couldn't afford to sustain, while Augustus was managing threats from Europe to Persia simultaneously. and Amanirenas knew that. That's the thing about her that I keep coming back to. She wasn't just brave. She was strategic in a way that reads as completely modern. She understood that she didn't need to destroy Rome. She just needed to make occupying her land more expensive than it was worth. So Rome sent envoys, and Amanirenas sent her own representatives to meet with Augustus on the island of Samos. What came out of that negotiation was the Treaty of Samos, around 21 BCE. Rome withdrew from the territory it had taken. The tribute Rome had initially demanded from Kush was cancelled entirely. The Kushite prisoners Rome held were returned. A buffer zone was established on Kushite terms. Strabo recorded this somewhat grudgingly, noting that Augustus was generous with the Kushites. That framing is doing a lot of work. The generous framing is covering for the fact that a one-eyed African queen negotiated Rome into a peace that favored her kingdom more than his empire. And the kingdom of Kush thrived for another 3 centuries after that. I think about what it takes to do what she did. Not just the military campaign, but the sustained belief that you can outmaneuver the most powerful empire on earth when everyone around you is watching Rome absorb kingdoms like water. That's the thing mainstream history keeps burying. Not just the battles. The certainty that your civilization is worth fighting for even when the odds look impossible. Amanirenas had that. Her people built temples to her victory. They remembered. We just forgot for a while. If this kind of history is what you're here for, the real turning points, the commanders no textbook bothered to teach you, subscribe and stay close. I've got more stories exactly like this one. The link in the description goes deeper on Kush if you want to start there.